There is a treatise from the 3rd century that identifies a specific bone structure capable of reversing emotional chaos when you learn how to move it. This point is located in your spine, directly involves the spinal cord, and remains dormant in most people. While it stays inactive, your nervous system interprets compression as a constant threat, generating anxiety without an obvious cause. Racing thoughts, deep fatigue, and a persistent sense of inner misalignment that you may have been carrying for years. This ancient record called the process the right of the spinal cord, and that knowledge disappeared from Western texts for centuries. In this video, you will locate where this bone structure is and learn how to move it with precision to reorganize the tone of your nervous system. If you keep watching, there will come a moment when you feel the bones begin to shift and the internal chaos starts to drain, because, for the first time, someone has taught your body how to change the geometry that supports your spinal cord. The spinal cord does not function only as a neural transmission cable. It works like a vibrational antenna that picks up, stores, and organizes emotional frequencies within the bone structure that surrounds it. Unprocessed trauma, inherited fears, and ancestral memories do not float around like abstract thoughts. They are inscribed in the physical configuration of the spine, altering the curvature of the vertebrae, the density of the fluid that bathes the spinal cord, and the way your body interprets the world around you. Hermetic schools already recognize the spine as an inner staff of light, the vertical axis where electric impulses and lineage memories converge. Each vertebra was seen as a portal of transmutation, and the spinal cord as a living channel where ancient pacts, family patterns, and unresolved information wait for recognition. This knowledge was not poetic. It was operational, because the initiates knew that shifting the position of specific points in the bone structure could change states of perception, memory, and creation from the root. When a trauma remains unprocessed, it does not go away. It crystallizes in the bone geometry around the spinal cord, creating compression in specific regions of the spine. This compression changes the pressure on the nerves, affects the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, and distorts the signals that the vagus nerve sends to the brain about safety or threat. The result is a body living in a state of chronic hypervigilance, interpreting internal compression as an ongoing external danger, even when there is no real threat happening. Polyvagal theory reveals that the autonomic nervous system activates fight, flight, or collapse responses even before your conscious mind processes the stimulus. What few people understand is that this perception of danger does not only come from external events. It comes from the internal reading the spinal cord makes of its own compressed structure. When the bones that support the spinal cord are misaligned or under pressure, the body interprets that compression as a constant threat, maintaining anxiety, racing thoughts, and deep fatigue even after years of therapy aimed at reorganizing the mind without ever touching the structure. This explains why you may have worked exhaustively on emotional issues and still feel like something remains unresolved. The information is not stored only in your psychological memory. It is inscribed in the geometry of your body, in the way your bones either support or compress the spinal cord. Someone discovered this in the most visceral way possible, and that person's story will shed light on exactly where the bone point responsible is located, and why it controls the entire tone of your nervous system. Emma was 43 years old and worked as a florist in Newcastle, Australia. She had been practicing meditation for over a decade, took Tai Chi classes, read about spirituality, and followed a disciplined diet. Even so, she woke up every morning with an invisible weight between her shoulders, as if she were carrying something she couldn't let go of. Her breath never went deeper than her chest. Her solar plexus remained tense, even during practice. and there was a deep fatigue that 8 hours of sleep could not relieve. Emma had already tried deep tissue massages that brought relief for a few hours before the tension returned. She went through months of acupuncture focused on releasing energetic blockages. She had done intense emotional work, revisiting childhood trauma, searching for repeating patterns, trying to understand why her body remained on high alert even though her life was stable. None of it touched the root of the problem. The tension always came back, as if it were inscribed in a deeper layer that none of those approaches could reach. That was when Emma came across an obscure reference in a text about ancestral somatic medicine. It mentioned a specific bone point in the spine that is rarely accessed. The text described the base of the neck as a structural portal where the spinal cord becomes vulnerable to compression, and that consciously touching this region could shift the tone of the entire nervous system. She located the point with her fingers and immediately felt an intense bone rigidity, a concentrated pressure that seemed to be holding all the tension she felt in her shoulders, chest, and breath. Emma began to understand that the problem wasn't in her mind. It was in the bone structure, one no one had ever consciously touched before. That point at the base of her neck seemed to be the switch for everything. She started investigating how to move that region with precision, applying gentle pressure while adjusting the tilt of her head. And something inside her body began to reorganize in a way she had never experienced before. Now it's your turn to locate this point. Emma discovered where the compression was happening, and what came after that discovery completely changed the way her body responded to the world. But first, you need to feel in your own neck the same bone rigidity she found. The point Emma identified is located between the 7th cervical vertebra and the 1st thoracic vertebra, right at the base of the neck where the cervical curve meets the thoracic curve. This is the spinal portal the 3rd century treatise identified as the structural switch of internal chaos. Place your fingers at the base of your neck now and look for the most prominent bone you can feel. You will notice a vertebra that stands out from the rest, like a small bony mound just beneath the skin. Gently press that area using 2 or 3 fingers while tilting your head very slightly forward. Do not force anything. Simply create a micro movement that allows you to feel the space between the vertebrae. Hold the pressure for a few seconds and see if there is any rigidity, warmth, or a sense of concentrated compression in that point. If the tension feels intense, reduce the pressure and work with even smaller movements, respecting what your body allows right now. Now, with your fingers still on the point, begin to make micro tilts of your head forward and backward, almost imperceptible movements that help decompress the space between the vertebrae. With each tilt, imagine you are creating more space around the spinal cord, allowing the cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely. You may begin to feel local warmth, a softening of the shoulder tension, or a sense that something is beginning to release from within. Keep your fingers on the point and now introduce axis breathing. Inhale deeply, visualizing the air coming down from the top of your head, passing through the point you are touching, and moving down your spine as if it were a hollow tube all the way to your tailbone. Exhale, reversing the path, feeling the air rise from your tailbone to the top of your head. With each breath cycle, sense the spinal cord expanding from within, as if it were gaining space inside the bone structure. Repeat this axis breathing for at least 5 full cycles, keeping your attention on the base of the neck. You may notice that your breath begins to move down past your chest, reaching the abdomen naturally. You may feel your solar plexus releasing, your jaw softening, or your shoulders dropping without conscious effort. These are the first signs that your spinal cord is beginning to recognize safety instead of threat. If the region feels very rigid and you experience strong resistance, keep the movements minimal and focus only on axis breathing, without trying to force any bone decompression. If there is already some mobility and the point responds well, you can slightly deepen the finger pressure and increase the range of the micro-tilts in your head. Your body will let you know what is possible now, and you must honor that limit without trying to rush the process. Before moving on to the second stage, you need to know what happened to Emma after she located this point for the first time. Emma performed that exact gesture, pressing the point at the base of her neck, while making the micro-tilts with her head and breathing along the central axis. In the first few minutes, she felt the chronic tension she had carried between her shoulders begin to drain in an organized way, as if something were finally unraveling. Her breath moved down into her abdomen for the first time in years, without any effort. The racing thoughts that filled her mind began to slow down naturally, without her trying. In the following days, real changes began to appear. Emma's posture reorganized itself, without her having to remember to stand up straight. Her sleep became restorative, and she woke up without the invisible weight on her shoulders. Her relationships became less reactive, because her body had stopped interpreting closeness or conflict as an immediate threat. Creative projects that had been stuck for months began to move forward, because her mind was no longer hijacked by anxiety loops with no real source. What Emma felt in that first gesture is exactly what you are beginning to sense in your own body now. The rigidity you touched, the breath that is moving downward, the softening happening in your shoulders. All of this indicates that the spinal cord is responding to the decompression and reorganizing the tone of your nervous system from the root. Now, you will deepen the practice by placing your awareness inside the spinal cord, not just touching the point from the outside. Keep your fingers at the base of your neck, continue the axis breathing, but now direct your attention into the spine, as if you could listen to your own inner axis. Imagine your awareness descending into the bone structure and following the spinal cord channel from top to bottom. As you breathe along the axis and keep your attention inward, perceive the spinal cord as a living channel through which emotional memory flows. This is not abstract visualization, it is somatic perception. You are feeling the structure that organizes your internal states. With each inhale, the space around the spinal cord expands. With each exhale, the old compression dissolves a little more, releasing patterns that had been stored in the bone configuration. This integration between bone decompression, axis breathing, and internal attention creates neurophysiological synergy. The vagus nerve, upon sensing decompression at the C7T1 point, signals the brain that the threat level has decreased. Cortisol begins to drop, and acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter of deep calm, is activated. You are not just relaxing, you are rewriting how the spinal cord interprets safety and danger, altering your body's chemistry from the structure that supports it. Keep this integrated practice going for 3 to 5 more full breath cycles. When you finish, release your fingers from the point. Allow your head to return to a neutral position, and feel your whole body responding to the reorganization you just created. The core practice is now complete, and it's time to seal this transformation so it becomes a permanent part of how your body operates. Notice the physical signs confirming the reorganization. Your breath naturally reaches the abdomen without conscious effort. Your solar plexus is less guarded, your jaw has softened, and the weight you carried between your shoulders has either dissipated or decreased significantly. These physical markers show that the spinal cord has recognized the decompression and that the vagus nerve has signaled safety to the brain, shifting the tone of your entire nervous system. To anchor this state, you will now create a signal gesture that can be repeated in any context. Place 2 fingers on the C7T1 point at the base of your neck. Apply gentle micropressure and take one deep breath, feeling the air move down your spine. This gesture takes less than 30 seconds and immediately reactivates the reorganization you just created, working as a somatic reminder that your body knows how to return to center. When you feel the tension rising again between your shoulders, or notice that your breath is once more trapped in your chest, locate the C7T1 point. Apply the decompression gesture for 3 full access breaths and silently repeat, "My axis is stable. My spinal cord recognizes safety." This sentence is not a vague affirmation. It is a direct instruction to your nervous system, reminding your body that it already knows how to interpret safety instead of threat. You have just rewritten the way your body organizes internal states. From now on, you carry a tool that changes the bone geometry supporting your spinal cord, shifting the emotional chemistry that drives your reactions, your decisions, and the quality of presence you bring into the world. You now recognize that the emotional chaos you carried came from bone compression around the spinal cord, not from a disorganized mind. This realization completely changes the way you relate to your own body. Your relationships stop being fields of reactivity because your nervous system no longer interprets closeness as threat. Your decisions come from a quieter center, no longer contaminated by anxiety, rooted in a compressed structure. Your creativity moves forward because your mind is no longer hijacked by survival loops written into your bone geometry. The right of the spinal cord is just one doorway into a much vaster territory. There are other bone points waiting to be acknowledged, other somatic structures holding ancestral memories and inherited patterns. Your entire body is a temple with chambers not yet explored, and each one carries keys of transmutation that you are only beginning to uncover. What you've experienced here is the beginning of an inner cartography that extends far beyond what has been revealed. Paracelsus once wrote, "The body is the laboratory where the spirit performs its work." He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He meant it as literal operation. The bone structure you have just altered is part of that alchemical work. The source that animates your body never asked you to ignore the physical structure. It asked you to listen to it as sacred language, as a code written in matter that reveals paths of transmutation only accessible when you touch the temple from within. If this video resonated with you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to keep receiving practices that awaken dormant structures in your body. Do you know someone who carries that invisible weight between their shoulders, that stuck breath, that silent inner chaos? Share this video with them. Sometimes, the missing key is realizing that the origin is not in the mind, it's in the spinal cord. To support the creation of this content and help it reach more people who need to reconnect with their inner axis, become a channel member. Your contribution makes it possible for this knowledge to keep reaching those who've been searching for years. Leave a comment below. I awaken my spinal cord and silence the inner chaos. When you write this, you're not only anchoring the practice in your own body, you're creating a vibrational field that strengthens the transformation for everyone who arrives here after you. Click the icon that's now appearing on your screen and continue your somatic journey. Every structure you awaken expands your mastery over the temple you inhabit, and there is much more waiting to be revealed. Your body never held onto chaos to punish you. It engraved into your bone structure everything you weren't yet ready to process, waiting for the moment when you would know how to touch the spinal cord and reorganize what had been compressed all along.